Ready in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And set, mark, action.
The newest Marvel movie got released this weekend in theaters. Eternals came out. It's directed by Chloe Zhao and starring just an immense cast here. It's kind of like an Avengers-like film, but no build-up to these characters, no kind of knowing who these characters are before we get into the movie. So that kind of hurt. I'll get into that later. But starring in this movie is Gemma Chan, Richard Madden, Kumail Nanjiani, Leah McHugh, Brian Tyree Henry, Laura Ridloff, Barry Keoghan, Don Lee, Harish Patel, Kit Harrington, Salma Hayek, and Angelina Jolie, plus many more. But this movie starts off just immense backstory, some exposition on top of exposition that's needed, just so you know who these people are, why they're a team, what brought them to Earth, what their mission is, even though that's kind of like the story here is what is their actual mission compared to what they're told their mission is. And this movie is a good 2 hours and 40 minutes long, but it did not feel that long at all. It was entertaining and it kind of flew by for that runtime, and it never felt like it dragged at any point to me. So the Eternals are brought to Earth to help save them from the deviants and kind of control and help save humanity on Earth is their mission, they thought, but it kind of gets twisted in a way, and it's kind of like the same dilemma that Thanos had, is just helping the universe grow with a couple of casualties along the way and not focusing on just one person, focusing on society as a whole. And it's just that sacrifice of thousands for a million people to strive and to prosper. That's kind of like the moral dilemma that the Eternals are facing here, and deciding what to do to go against their mission or follow through with their mission. Each character has their own complex issues they're trying to go through. Some are given more screen time than others. Gemma Chan is the star of this film. She becomes the leader of this Eternals team and is a very good bright spot in this movie and gives a great performance. And then, but the other characters are just not developed enough. They're touched upon, but they're not really dissected that much, and that's just because of so much stuff's happening in this film and so many people are getting introduced that it would have benefited to have one or two separate films before this to kind of get us invested in these characters. The only characters you're really invested in this movie are Gemma Chan, Leah McHugh's character, and then Kumail Nanjiani's character. I too feel like you get invested in, but like Richard Madden, you don't really see his motivation for the actions he takes, and just that turn at the end that he has morally is kind of forced and just kind of laughable at times. The audience actually laughed when this character made a certain decision, and it's just shows you how much of development this movie should have had, rather than just shoving all these characters into one movie and trying to highlight each one and make each one unique and each one have a story. Ultimately, I saw this movie as kind of like a Rogue One in a way compared to the Star Wars universe. Just these characters should have had this mission and should have pulled it through. If all of them died, it would have been, I think, a better movie and a like good standalone movie rather than trying to keep this continuing story going on. And it's just Rogue One did that so well of introducing new characters and making us care for them. Not such a big team in Rogue One, which helped it, but openly this mission is doomed to fail. And I think the Eternal succeeding was kind of far-fetched, and it just hurt the overall impact of the movie because of how this change happens in these characters and what happens at the end of the film. But I will have to say that Kumail Nanjiani does a good comic relief character in this. He's funny throughout it. He's laughing at his characters throughout the whole thing. I think the comedy in Marvel movies have kind of gotten stale over time, but this one really worked for me. And I'm really a big fan of his comedy in general. So I think that's one of the reasons behind why I liked him in this movie so much. And he just is a delight to see on screen. And I just can't help but smile when he makes his jokes. And his interaction with Harish Patel is also great. And just his overall character arc and who he is a little bit underdeveloped, but you can see it like rising. It just never falls that there's no conflict in his arc, and it's just hopefully he's developed more in the next Eternals movie or whatever movie he comes into in the Marvel Cinematic Universe next. And then the villain in this, it's way too obvious from the start. You think it's the Deviants, but there's another bigger villain in this, and it's just underdeveloped. Like I said, this movie's big mistake in this movie is the underdevelopment of these characters and not taking the time to get us invested in them. And that's the same with the villain. That this is the kind of twist villain, like you're not supposed to expect it, but you know right from the first 30 minutes of this film who's doing these evil things and his master plan, but then the master plan's kind of falls flat. And this movie is definitely a setup to taking the Marvel Cinematic Universe into the galaxy, this galactic war coming. You can feel it. You can just feel the setup that each one of these characters has in the upcoming films, just based on the end credit scene too. The two end credit scenes were very well done and continuing this Eternals story and this team where they're going next in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. That was very well done. But ultimately, this movie just falls flat for me in so many aspects that I can only give it we'll go with a 47 out of 100 for this. It's very low. I actually think it's in my bottom 5 Marvel MCU movies in general. So I'll break down my top 5 bottom 5 MCU movies. I'll give here a little twist on my top 5. So I guess I'll start with my number 5 worst Marvel Cinematic Universe movie here, and it's Ant-Man and the Wasp. It was just there and didn't really do anything for me. The villain was kind of lackluster in it. And then number 4 is Eternals. It's still a decent movie. Like, it's not like any of these movies are bad until we get to like my bottom worst movie of all time, but these other movies are still good. I still think Eternals is good. Ant-Man and the Wasp is good. And then at number 3 is Thor: The Dark World, which I still enjoy and find good things in. And I'm excited to see Natalie Portman come back in the new Thor, and we'll see how this goes. And maybe it just makes Thor 2: The Dark World better based on what happens in Thor 4. Could revisit it, and maybe it'll move up my list here soon. And at number 2 is a controversial pick here. It's Doctor Strange. I just did not like the character at all in here. I didn't like Benedict Cumberbatch's performance in it, and it just, I just don't like it. I can't explain it. It's just one of those tones I think's all off. It's very unlikable. It's very uninteresting to me. So yeah, Doctor Strange is at number 2 of my all-time worst MCU movies, which is some of people's favorite movies are in their top 5, but in my opinion, it's in the bottom 5. And that number 1, I think, is just everyone's opinion on this is Iron Man 2 is my number 1 worst MCU movie. The accent Mickey Rourke uses is terrible. They're just trying to throw in so many cameos in this and just Easter eggs that it doesn't focus on the story. And then the action, I think, is underwhelming in it as well. So that's why it's my number 1 worst MCU movie to date as of 2021. Thank you for watching, guys. Just comment below of your bottom 5 MCU movies. I'm sure there's some great ones in there. My list is very my opinion, and I know I'll get a lot of flack for hating Doctor Strange, but it is what it is. Bye, guys.